Hello, it's good to be with you today. This is for the first through fourth grade class at Gloster Street. And it's actually for this coming Sunday, April the 5th. Um, Let me tell you about a couple of things that you may find on Gloster Street's website right now for you. Sometime this weekend, there should be a Pew Packers video come on our website. On this video, Cason's going to lead three songs, and then Louis Cervantes will give a devotional just designed for you, for children, and then Cason will lead three more songs. So I hope you enjoy that. The songs are designed to help you with the books of the Bible and some memory goals and the apostles. So be sure to sing along with that, and you can watch that as many times as you would like to. Now, let me give you a few review questions, and you can give these answers to your parents. I'll give the answers at the end of this so that they'll know what the answers are. These are things you should know, and if not, you need to learn. We talked about the church beginning. Now, my first question is, on what day did the church begin? It was a feast day for the Jews, and I want to know what that feast day was. Number two, what chapter of the Bible records the church beginning? And that's really important because everything before this chapter leads up to this chapter, and everything after this chapter really points back to this chapter. Sometimes this is called the middle chapter of the Bible, but it's not really in the middle, but it's middle because of that. So what chapter in the book of Acts did the church begin? Did this day take place? Number three, when we looked at Acts chapter 3, we looked at Peter and John, two of the apostles, going to the temple. And they find a man on the way to the temple. Question number 3 is, what was this man doing? He was asking for something, and we learned this word in our vocabulary words. And number 4, what was wrong with this man? Why was he sitting by the side of the road doing whatever he was doing? Number 5, what did Peter tell this man? He said something that was really interesting, and you need to know what he said. And then number 6, what did Peter do for this man? And I'm sure that was very, very important for this particular man. When they all got to the temple, the people there, when they saw the man, reacted. Why did they react the way they did? And that'll sort of tie all this together. Now, in the next lesson, in Acts chapter 4, we find Peter and John, and they were arrested. Why were they arrested by the Jews? And what did that court command them to quit doing? And then question number 9, how did Peter reply to the court when they issued that command? Last week we looked at Acts chapter 5. And this time all of the apostles are arrested by the court. And something very odd happened. They put them in jail, and they were going to pull them out the next day and take them to court. And when they went to get them the next day, what did they find? That's question number 10. And then number 11, where were the apostles? And what were they doing? Question number 12. What did they tell the apostles when they finally got them in court? And then question number 13, what did the apostles tell the court? Now there was a man who was part of this court, and hopefully you remember his name. He was Paul's teacher, Paul the apostle, when Paul was younger, and his name was Saul. And this man told the court that if these folks are fake, they're not teaching the truth, this movement's going to die. It'll disappear. But if what they're doing is from God, we can't do anything to stop it. Now, let me give you the answers to those questions, parents, and hopefully your kids got them all right. Number one, the church began on the day of Pentecost. And number two, that was in Acts chapter 2. Number three, this man on the way to the temple was asking for alms. He was asking for money. Alms is one of our vocabulary words. And number four, this man was lame. He had not been able to walk from birth. Number five, Peter told him, and I'm going to put this in my words, I don't have any money, but I'll give you what I do have. And number six, what he gave him was he healed him. He gave him the ability to walk. And so number seven, when they go to the temple, this man's up walking around, and the people who knew he was lame were just amazed and astounded. And he told them that Peter and John had healed him. They had done this to them. Number eight, Peter and John were arrested because they were preaching. And they told Peter and John to quit preaching. And number nine, Peter said, we have to tell what we've seen and what we've heard. Number 10, the apostles were all arrested, and they were put in prison, and an angel of the Lord let them out of prison and told them to go back to the temple and preach. And that's what they did. So number 11, when they found the apostles, they found them in the temple preaching. Number 12, they got real upset. They said, we told you not to preach. And Philip replied the apostles replied in chapter 13, we have to obey God rather than man. And the man's name, who was Paul's teacher, who told them what he said, his name was Gamaliel. Hopefully you knew those questions. We'll repeat them. And parents, you may want to repeat them periodically until they learn them. Those are some very important facts on the book of Acts. Now, to our lesson today, we're in Acts chapter 6 and Acts chapter 7. In Acts chapter 6, there's a problem arises in the church. Some of the widows seem to not be being taken care of. And some complaining got started. So some of the Grecian widows seemed to be ignored and the Jewish widows weren't. And that really wasn't what was happening. The apostles just didn't have time to do everything they were doing. And so they told the church to choose 7 men. And these men would be assigned the job to take care of all the widows. And they had certain qualifications. These men had to be certain things in order to be chosen. And they chose certain men. Sometimes people say these men were the first deacons, and that may well be true. They seem to be doing the work that a deacon does, but they're never called deacons. So maybe that was just what would later become deacons, but deacons have to meet certain qualifications, and deacons are given jobs by the elders, so those jobs can be taken care of, and the elders can concentrate their attention on other things. And so they were much like deacons. Now, one of those deacons' name was Stephen. Stephen was filled with the Holy Spirit, and what that means was the Holy Spirit gave him the ability to do miracles, and he did miracles, and also gave him the ability to speak with wisdom, to say things that were true that maybe he wouldn't have known otherwise. So Stephen would preach, and he would preach the truth, and then he could perform miracles to prove that what he was saying was actually from God. What this did was cause the people to be amazed, and a lot of people to obey God and to become Christians. But it caused some of the Jewish leaders to become very angry at Stephen. They saw the people turning away from them to him. And so they arrested him and they brought him before the council or before the court. And they had false witnesses who said things about Stephen that just really weren't true. And finally, Stephen was given a chance to speak. And chapter 7 of Acts is almost entirely Stephen's sermon. Stephen gave a wonderful background history of the Old Testament. He talked about a promise being made to Abraham, that the descendants of Abraham became slaves in Egypt, that God brought them out of Egypt and formed the nation of Israel, that they served idols quite often, and we see that a lot in the Old Testament, until God finally took them into captivity where they were under the rule of another nation. They came out of captivity, and Stephen emphasized that you are just like your ancestors. They disobeyed God and they rebelled, and that's what you're doing too. And it made these Jewish leaders so mad, they actually bit Stephen with their teeth, or they wanted to, and they took him outside the city and they stoned Stephen to death. They threw large rocks at him until he literally died. And before he died, he prays to Jesus not to lay this sin to their charge. Now, one other interesting fact here, there was a young man there when all this was going on, the court was taking place, and when they stoned Stephen. His name was Saul of Tarsus, and a lot of people think he was probably in charge of what was going on. So remember that. We're going to talk some more about what happens with that next week. I hope you all have a tremendous week. I know you're stuck at home, and you're going to be stuck at home a little bit more for the next few weeks. But this virus will eventually pass, and we'll be able to get out and see people again. We just want you to be safe, and I hope you continue that way. Until next week, I hope you keep studying the Bible.